I was told I wasn't good enough. After all the late nights, the extra hours, and the dedication I put into my job, my boss told me I wasn't what they were looking for. Carla Stevens, the woman I had respected and worked tirelessly under for the past few years, told me I wasn't good enough for the promotion I had been working toward. And she didn't just say it with a hint of regret or hesitation. No, she said it with finality. It was a slap in the face, a blow I never expected. I had always prided myself on my work ethic. Every project I took on, every challenge I faced, I gave it my all. I was the one who stayed late to make sure things were perfect, the one who picked up the slack when others dropped the ball. My colleagues might have been content to coast, but I wasn't like that. I believed in the value of hard work. I thought that if I kept my head down and delivered results, it would eventually pay off. But in that moment, when Carla looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't the right fit, I realized that my efforts had been nothing more than a game to her. It hurt more than I care to admit. There I was, thinking I had done everything right, only to watch as someone else, someone who didn't have the same drive, the same passion, was handed the promotion instead of me. Lily Jackson, the woman who had only joined the company a year ago and who I'd mentored, was given the job I had worked so hard to earn. It didn't make sense. I remember walking out of that office, feeling the weight of her words sinking in. I was shocked, to be honest. I had always been told I was capable. My performance reviews were excellent, and everyone around me seemed to acknowledge how dedicated I was. Yet, here I was, overlooked, passed over for a role that should have been mine. The anger began to bubble up, but I forced myself to keep it down. I couldn't let her see that she had gotten to me. I couldn't let Carla or anyone else see how hurt I was. So I smiled. I congratulated Lily, even though it felt like I was suffocating. I smiled through the pain, through the anger, because that's what was expected of me. That's what good employees do, right? They stay professional, even when they're being treated unfairly. But inside, I was burning. I wasn't angry just because I was passed over for the promotion. I was angry because Carla didn't seem to understand who she was dealing with. She didn't realize that I was more than just someone to pick up the slack. I had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed, but I wasn't going to let that be the end of my story. Little did she know I was about to turn everything around. This wasn't the end for me. This was just the beginning. What Carla didn't realize when she looked at me with that dismissive smile was that I wasn't going to fade into the background. I wasn't going to sulk and wait for my next chance to come. No, I was going to show her. I was going to take control of my own future, and I wasn't going to let her or anyone else decide my worth. That day marked the moment I decided that I wasn't going to wait for validation from anyone. I wasn't going to beg for a promotion. I wasn't going to wait around for someone else to recognize my potential. I was going to make it happen for myself. And in the end, it was going to be Carla's mistake, not mine. She thought she had broken me, but in reality, she had just set the stage for me to prove that I was more than capable, and that I wasn't going to let anyone, not even her, tell me I wasn't good enough. This wasn't just about stealing a promotion. This was about taking back control of my career and showing everyone that I was far more than they gave me credit for. I had always believed in the power of hard work. From the very first day I stepped into Stratford Consulting, I knew that this was my opportunity. It was a well-known, well-respected company in our industry, and the chance to be part of something so prestigious felt like a dream come true. I started as an entry-level analyst, working with a team that was constantly under pressure to meet deadlines and deliver results. It wasn't an easy job by any means, but it was one I was ready for. I was hungry to prove myself, eager to show everyone what I was capable of. As the months passed, I settled into my role, becoming more comfortable with my responsibilities. But it didn't stop there. I knew that if I wanted to climb the ladder, I had to go above and beyond. I didn't just do the work I was asked to do, I did more. I took on extra projects, stayed late at the office, and volunteered for tasks no one else wanted. I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to prove that I wasn't just another cog in the wheel. I was someone who could contribute to the bigger picture. I thought that if I kept giving my best, it would eventually pay off. I believed that recognition would come. In fact, I expected it. I had been told countless times by my colleagues and even my manager that I was doing a great job. I had earned praise for my contributions, and it seemed like the logical next step for me would be a promotion. Then there was Carla Stevens, my boss. She was the one who made the final decisions about promotions and career advancements, and I respected her. She was tough but fair, or at least I thought she was. Carla always seemed to have a sharp eye for talent. She valued results, and I believed I was consistently delivering. I watched her closely, hoping to learn from her leadership style, and I made sure that my work didn't just meet expectations, it exceeded them. As the months went by, I grew more confident that I was on the right track. I started to imagine what it would be like to get promoted. I could picture myself in a leadership role, making decisions, influencing the direction of our projects. I was ready for it. The thought of stepping into a position of more responsibility filled me with excitement. I knew it would be hard work, but I was up for the challenge. When the promotion cycle came around, I could feel the anticipation building. I had watched others get promoted before, and I knew that now it was my time. The signs were all there. I had been performing well, receiving positive feedback, and taking on more responsibilities. I had earned it, and I believed that Carla would see that too. My confidence was at an all-time high. I had worked for this moment, but then came the meeting that would change everything. The day of the promotion announcement, I walked into the conference room, a mix of excitement and nervous energy swirling inside me. I was ready. I was prepared to hear my name called as the next person to be promoted. I had been working toward this moment for months, and it was finally time for the payoff. Carla started the meeting, and my heart was racing as she spoke. She talked about the future of the company, about growth and opportunity, and then she began discussing the promotions. I sat there waiting for my name to be called, for that moment when everything I had worked for would finally come to fruition. But then, she said something that shattered my world. "Lily Jackson will be promoted to senior analyst," Carla said, her voice filled with confidence. Lily? I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. I had been certain that I was the one. Lily had only been with the company for a little over a year, and while she was smart, she didn't have the experience or the years of dedication that I had. I had worked harder, stayed later, and done everything in my power to show that I was ready for this role. But somehow, Lily had gotten it. I looked around the room, seeing the congratulations being offered to her, but I couldn't bring myself to join in. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't understand it. How could this happen? How could someone so new, so untested, be given the role that I had worked so hard for? It didn't make sense. I was confused, hurt, and angry all at once. But the last thing I wanted to do was make a scene. I had learned to keep my emotions in check, especially in front of others. So I did what I always did. I kept my composure. I smiled, congratulated Lily, and pretended that everything was fine. But deep inside, I was seething. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Carla went on to talk about the goals for the next quarter, but all I could think about was the injustice I had just witnessed. I had given everything to this company, but it didn't seem to matter. The promotion wasn't about who had worked hardest or who had contributed the most. It was about something else. Maybe it was about politics, or maybe it was about favoritism. But whatever it was, I knew I had been overlooked. I left the meeting feeling a mixture of emotions. I felt crushed, but I also felt a growing sense of determination. I knew that I had been passed over, but I wasn't going to let that define me. I wasn't going to let this setback stop me from achieving my goals. In that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I wasn't going to stay in the background forever. I was going to find a way to prove that I was the one who deserved that promotion, and in a way that no one expected. The wheels started turning in my mind. Carla may have overlooked me, but I wasn't going to let her decision be the end of my story. I had worked too hard to let someone else take my spot. Little did she know I was about to take control of my own destiny, and I wasn't going to wait for permission to do so. The real challenge was just beginning. In the days that followed the promotion announcement, I could feel the weight of the disappointment bearing down on me. It wasn't just about the promotion itself. It was the sense of being overlooked, The feeling that everything I had worked for, all the extra hours I had put in, and the sacrifices I had made, had meant nothing in the eyes of my boss. Carla's decision didn't just affect my career. It felt like a slap in the face, a rejection of everything I had done to prove myself. For the first time in my career, I began to question everything. Was I really not good enough? Had all my efforts been for nothing? The self-doubt crept in, slowly, but I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I focused on the anger I felt, the frustration that burned inside me. I had spent years proving myself. I had gone above and beyond every single day, all while others, like Lily, who barely knew the ropes, were getting rewarded for doing far less. It didn't make sense, and it didn't feel fair. I spent the next few days pretending that I was fine, walking through the motions at work. I greeted my colleagues with the same smile, participated in meetings like nothing had changed, but inside, I was a mess. Every time I looked at Carla, I felt a knot in my stomach. She acted like everything was normal, like nothing had happened, but I could see the smugness in her eyes. She was pleased with herself for making what she believed to be the right decision. To her, it was just another promotion. To me, it felt like everything I had worked for had been disregarded. It was hard not to let it affect me. I had worked so hard and it all seemed so pointless now. But there was something inside me, a spark that refused to die. I wasn't going to let this defeat me. I wasn't going to let Carla's words or her decision define me. I had always believed in myself, and I wasn't about to start doubting my abilities just because of one setback. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I wanted to prove everyone wrong, especially Carla. I wasn't going to sit back and let her believe she had made the right choice by promoting Lily over me. I wasn't going to let her see me as anything less than capable. I knew I had to take control. I couldn't sit around waiting for another opportunity to be handed to me. I wasn't going to sit quietly and hope that I would get a chance to prove myself again. That wasn't the kind of person I was. I had always been the one who worked for what I wanted, and this time would be no different. I had to show Carla and everyone else in that office that I was the one who deserved that promotion, and more. The first step was to figure out exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't going to make a rash decision or do something impulsive. I was going to take a strategic approach. I began observing Lily more closely. I had always been the one to support her, to help her when she needed guidance. But now I had a different role to play. I needed to understand her weaknesses, to see where she was struggling. As I watched her in meetings, I noticed that she often struggled with the more complex aspects of our work. She lacked the depth of knowledge I had, the experience I had built over the years. It wasn't that she was incapable, it was just that she wasn't ready for the role she had been given. This gave me a sense of confidence. I knew that if I kept pushing, kept working harder and smarter, I could eventually surpass her. The promotion wasn't just about being good enough, it was about being the best for the job, and I knew I could prove that. I started taking on more high-profile projects, stepping up in ways I hadn't before. I volunteered for tough assignments, the ones no one else wanted, and I gave it my all. I didn't care if I had to stay late or work on weekends. I was going to show everyone that I was more than capable of handling the responsibility. I wasn't going to let Lily's promotion get in the way of my own success. If Carla wouldn't recognize my worth, then I would force her to see it. But as I worked harder, I also started to see something else that fueled my determination. Lily was beginning to struggle. I saw the cracks in her performance. She was over her head. She lacked the experience to handle the demanding tasks she had been given, and I could see her confidence starting to waver. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. This wasn't just about proving myself. It was about showing that I could excel in ways she couldn't. It wasn't about her being a bad person or a bad colleague. It was about my skills, my dedication, and the value I brought to the company. I continued to watch Lily closely, observing the mistakes she made, the areas where she faltered, and the opportunities where I could step in. The more I saw, the more it became clear to me that she wasn't ready for the promotion she had been given. I had been overlooked for this role because of a single decision, but I wasn't going to let that happen again. The next few weeks were critical. I pushed myself harder than ever, taking on high-priority tasks and making sure I delivered results. I focused on what mattered, proving that I was the one who could handle the job. I stopped worrying about the injustice of the situation and started thinking about how I could turn it around. I wasn't going to wait for anyone's permission anymore. I was going to make my own way, and I was going to do it on my terms. With every project I completed, every challenge I overcame, I knew I was getting closer to my goal. I wasn't just working for a promotion anymore. I was working to prove my worth, not to Carla, not to Lily, but to myself. I was showing myself that I could do it, that I was more than good enough. The tension between me and Carla continued to grow, but I didn't let it distract me. I kept my focus on the future, knowing that sooner or later my hard work would pay off. I wasn't just going to take the promotion I deserved, I was going to earn it, and I was going to do it in a way that no one would ever forget. The decision to take control of my career was a pivotal moment for me. I knew that if I wanted to change the trajectory of my professional life, I couldn't just wait around for another promotion to be handed to me. I had to show everyone, especially Carla, that I was the right person for the job. The truth was, I wasn't just working for a promotion anymore. I was working to prove my value, to show that my dedication and hard work meant something. I wasn't going to sit by and let Lily's promotion define me. I was going to make my own success. With this newfound resolve, I started to change the way I approach my work. I no longer looked at the tasks ahead as simple assignments to get through. Every project became an opportunity to showcase my skills, to stand out in a way I hadn't before. I knew I had the experience, the knowledge, and the drive to do the job better than anyone else. But this time, I wasn't just going to prove it to myself. I was going to prove it to Carla, to the whole office. They had overlooked me before, but I wasn't going to let that happen again. I was determined to show that I was the one who truly deserved the promotion. I started to take on more responsibility at work. I volunteered for the toughest projects, the ones that had the most visibility. I didn't shy away from anything that might challenge me. The late nights and extra hours became routine, but I didn't mind. I was doing it for myself now, not for anyone else's approval. As I tackled each new challenge, I began to see the cracks in Lily's performance more clearly. She was struggling to keep up, making mistakes that were quickly becoming noticeable to others. It wasn't just about her inexperience. It was about the fact that she didn't have the same level of commitment and drive that I did. One day, I was in a meeting with Carla and a few other senior members of the team. We were discussing an upcoming project, and it was clear that Lily was having a hard time keeping up with the discussion. She seemed overwhelmed by the details and couldn't answer a few of the key questions that were being asked. I kept my composure, but inside, I felt a sense of vindication. I had seen this coming. I knew that Lily wasn't ready for the responsibilities that came with her promotion, and now everyone else could see it too. I didn't let myself get distracted by the small victories. This wasn't about gloating. It was about recognizing the opportunity that had opened up for me. I continued to push forward, using every opportunity to demonstrate my expertise. I worked closely with other departments, offering solutions to problems and making sure that my contributions were visible. The more I did, the more it became apparent that I was capable of handling the role that Lily had been given. But Carla still hadn't noticed. She still treated me as though I was just another team member, someone who could be relied upon but not necessarily promoted. I knew that I had to take matters into my own hands. If I wanted the promotion, I couldn't wait for someone else to recognize my potential. I had to make them see it. I began to take a more strategic approach in my dealings with Carla. Instead of waiting for her to notice my contributions, I started to position myself as the go-to person for the high-priority projects. I made sure my work was impeccable, and I started to push for more visibility within the company. I began attending networking events and meetings where I knew I could make an impact, ensuring that I was seen as a leader. I didn't want to be overlooked again, so I made sure I was always front and center, taking on projects that would make it impossible for anyone to ignore my capabilities. I also started speaking up more in meetings, offering insights and suggestions that reflected my growing expertise. At first, Carla seemed surprised by my assertiveness, but I didn't care. I had worked too hard to be quiet and meek anymore. I wasn't going to stay in the background while someone else took my place. I was going to make it clear that I was the one who deserved the next promotion. Then came the opportunity I had been waiting for. One afternoon, Carla called me into her office. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that this was my moment. She began by talking about the upcoming projects and the direction the company was heading in. It wasn't long before she started discussing the challenges the team was facing, and that's when I saw it. The opening I had been waiting for. Carla casually mentioned that we might need someone to step up and take on a leadership role for the next phase of the project. My heart raced as I realized that this was my chance to show Carla that I was the right person for the job. I didn't hesitate. I immediately stepped forward and expressed my interest in leading the team. Carla looked at me for a moment, clearly surprised. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, but I didn't let that stop me. I knew I had already proven my worth through my work and my dedication, and I wasn't going to back down now. I made my case, explaining how I had taken on increasing responsibilities and how my recent projects had directly contributed to the success of the team. I highlighted the fact that I was ready to take on more, that I had the experience and the vision to lead the team in the right direction. After what felt like an eternity, Carla finally nodded. "You've really stepped up, Emma. I've noticed the work you've been putting in, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. Let's talk about how we can move forward." That moment was the turning point. I had done it. I had seized the opportunity and made it clear that I was the one who should be in charge. Carla hadn't expected it, and Lily certainly hadn't seen it coming, but it didn't matter. I had taken control of my own future, and now I was in a position to prove that I was more than just good enough. I was the right person for the job. The day of reckoning had arrived. The moment I had worked so hard for was finally here. I had put in the hours, taken on every challenge that came my way, and fought for every opportunity to prove my worth. And now I was on the cusp of everything I had wanted. The recognition, the promotion, and the validation that had been denied to me just a few short months ago. But there was still one final hurdle to cross. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew that Carla had been watching me closely, likely still unsure whether I was ready for the role I had been vying for. But what she didn't know was that I had already surpassed her expectations. She just didn't know it yet. After our conversation in her office, where I made it clear that I was ready for more responsibility, Carla seemed hesitant, but acknowledged that I had stepped up. She told me that she would consider my request to lead the next major project. While she didn't give me a definitive answer right away, I could tell that my words had left an impression. She respected my drive and ambition, but there was still a part of me that wondered if I was just another name on the list. I couldn't wait around any longer for someone else to make the decision for me. I knew that the next move had to be mine. I took it upon myself to make sure that I continued to stand out, even as Carla continued to deliberate. The next few weeks became an intense period of focus. I knew that the success of the upcoming project would be the final deciding factor in whether or not I would get the promotion. I needed to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was the right person for the role, not just in my eyes, but in the eyes of everyone who mattered. My performance had already been solid, but I was about to elevate it even further. I dove into the project head first, taking on more than anyone else was willing to do. I was meticulous with every detail, making sure the execution was flawless. I worked with different teams, communicated effectively with higher-ups, and ensured everything went according to plan. The more I worked, the more I realized how much I enjoyed the challenge. It wasn't just about getting the promotion anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could lead and succeed under pressure. This was my moment to shine. At the same time, I began to notice the cracks in Lily's performance. She'd been given the promotion based on a mixture of favoritism and good timing, but she wasn't ready for the responsibilities that came with the role. The new challenges were overwhelming her, and I could see her struggling. The lack of experience was showing, and while I didn't want to relish in her misfortune, I couldn't help but recognize the opportunities that had now opened up for me. One day, I overheard a conversation between Carla and one of the senior managers. They were discussing the difficulties Lily was facing in her new role and how they were worried about her ability to meet expectations. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't that I wanted Lily to fail, it was that I had been overlooked for someone who wasn't truly ready for the position. Now I could see the difference in our abilities. I had been the one putting in the hard work, the one who had been there from the beginning, and it was finally becoming clear to everyone else. The turning point came when Carla called me into her office again. This time, there was no hesitation in her voice. There was a different energy in the room. "Emma," she began, "I've been watching your progress, and I've seen how you've handled the pressure. I think it's time we talk about the next steps for you." My heart raced as I sat there trying to remain calm. I knew this was it, the moment when everything would either fall into place or crumble. Carla looked at me, her gaze steady. She had a serious expression on her face, but I could tell that there was a hint of respect behind her eyes. "You've shown a lot of growth, and I think you're ready for the role you've been asking for." For a moment, I didn't speak. I had expected this day to come, but hearing it from Carla's mouth felt surreal. She wasn't just giving me the role because it was expected. She was acknowledging the work I had put in, the dedication I had shown, and the results I had delivered. It wasn't about favoritism, it was about merit. And that was exactly what I had been fighting for all along. "Thank you, Carla," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I've been working for this, and I'm ready to take on the responsibility." Carla smiled slightly, and for the first time in our interactions, I felt a sense of camaraderie between us. "I knew you could handle it, Emma. You've earned it." And just like that, I had done it. The promotion was mine. But it wasn't just the title or the new responsibilities that I was proud of. It was the journey I had taken to get here, the work I had put in, and the determination I had shown in the face of rejection. This wasn't just about stealing a spot. It was about taking back control of my career and proving that I was capable of much more than I had ever been given credit for. Walking out of Carla's office, I felt a sense of triumph that I couldn't quite describe. It wasn't just the victory of landing the promotion. It was the knowledge that I had earned it on my own terms. I had fought for this, and in the process, I had become someone stronger, more confident, and more capable than I had ever imagined. I wasn't just the employee who kept her head down and did the work. I was the one who took control of her future, who refused to let anyone tell her she wasn't good enough. The weeks following my promotion were some of the most satisfying and transformative of my career. It wasn't just the title or the new responsibilities that felt rewarding. It was the personal growth and confidence I gained from fighting for what I deserved. It was a reminder that when you push past rejection and refuse to let others define your worth, the rewards are so much sweeter. But as much as I wanted to bask in the success, I knew that this achievement wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning. As I settled into my new role, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The path had been rocky, full of challenges and moments of self-doubt, but each obstacle had shaped me into the person I had become. I realized that this victory wasn't just about proving something to Carla or anyone else at the company. It was about proving something to myself. I had spent so long trying to meet other people's expectations and seeking validation from them. But the real growth came when I stopped waiting for approval and started asserting my own value. That was when I began to truly understand my worth. When I first started out at Stratford Consulting, I was determined to prove myself. I thought that if I just worked hard enough and kept my head down, I would eventually be recognized. But the reality of the corporate world had been harsh. It wasn't just about working hard. It was about showing up, taking risks, and making sure that your contributions were seen. I had spent too much time waiting for someone to notice my hard work and for my boss to offer me a promotion out of the goodness of her heart. But I quickly learned that wasn't how things worked. Promotions were earned, not handed out. And I had to make it clear that I was more than just good enough. I was the best choice for the job. The decision to assert myself, to stop being passive, and start fighting for my place at the table was the most important decision I had ever made. It was a turning point. In the past, I had let my insecurities hold me back. I had been afraid to rock the boat, afraid to speak up for fear of being seen as too pushy or overbearing. But once I took control of my own narrative, everything changed. I no longer sought approval. I started setting my own standards. I became the kind of person who knew her value and wasn't afraid to claim it. But the change wasn't just internal. Once I assumed the role I had worked so hard for, I saw how differently people treated me. Colleagues who had once barely acknowledged my presence now sought my advice. Those who had dismissed me as just another worker started asking for my input on important decisions. I could see the respect in their eyes, the recognition that I had earned my spot at the table. It was a small but powerful shift, and I realized that the respect I had been chasing wasn't just about the promotion. It was about the confidence I had built through my actions. Carla, too, started to treat me differently. While she had always been a tough boss, I noticed that she now looked at me with a new level of respect. In the past, I had often felt overlooked, as if my contributions were an afterthought. But now, she sought my opinion on key projects and even praised my work in front of the team. I wasn't just another employee. I was a leader in her eyes. That shift in perception felt incredible. But it also reminded me of the power of taking control of your own story. Carla had once told me I wasn't good enough, but now she was asking for my advice, acknowledging that I had something valuable to offer. There was, however, one lesson that stayed with me more than any other. You can't let rejection define you. When I was told I wasn't good enough for the promotion, it was a moment of deep personal pain, but that pain fueled my determination. I had faced rejection before, but this time I didn't let it stop me. Instead, I used it as fuel to prove that I was capable of more than anyone had ever expected. The sting of that rejection became the catalyst for my growth. I wasn't going to let anyone else's opinions or judgments dictate what I could achieve. In the months that followed, I continued to excel in my new role. I became the go-to person for difficult projects, the one who could be relied upon to get things done under pressure. I was no longer just filling a seat at the table. I was actively shaping the direction of the company. It felt like I had finally found my place. But perhaps the most rewarding part of this journey wasn't the professional success. It was the personal growth, the realization that I didn't need anyone's approval to be successful. I didn't need to wait for validation from others. I had built my own confidence, my own path, and it was one I could walk with pride. I had proven to myself that I could achieve anything I set my mind to, no matter how many times I was told I wasn't good enough. Looking back on that moment of rejection, I realized how far I had come. I had taken that moment of pain and turned it into my greatest strength. The lessons I learned along the way about resilience, self-worth, and the power of determination shaped me into the person I am today. And now, as I sit in my new role, leading my team and making important decisions, I know that I wouldn't be here without that rejection. That moment of being told I wasn't good enough was the catalyst for everything that followed. It forced me to look inward, to find strength I didn't know I had, and to push myself harder than I ever had before. It was a painful experience, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And now I was in a position to prove that I was more than capable, more than good enough. I was exactly where I was me.